Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit for vehicles with the LED taillights. But before we do that, why don't we check them out and make sure that these are going to work for you. So right off the bat, before we kind of jump right in and get carried away talking about the smart diodes and how they're going to work and why you would need them and things like that, I figured it'd be useful just to kind of touch base and refresh ourselves on the main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Equinox down the road in the first place. So there's going to be a total of 5 main components needed. We usually like to have everything hooked up to the motorhome and really give you guys a good idea. Unfortunately today we don't have the motorhome, so bear with us here. We're trying to make do. But with that said, your first component is going to be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. So tow bar is going to be the second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your SUV to the back of your motorhome. Third main component is going to be safety cables. All right, and these are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. These are going to keep your Chevy connected to your RV. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is plug into the front of your Equinox and into the back of your motorhome, and this is going to transfer the lighting signals. So that way, whenever you're flat towing behind the RV, everyone's going to know what's going on. You know, when you hit your brakes, when you turn your running lights on, or use your turn signals. And last but not least, the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Equinox whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, helping bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. And there is a couple more things that I do want to recommend. They're not absolutely necessary, but I always like to suggest them, honestly, regardless of what type of vehicle you're flat towing. One of them is a battery charge line. So this one here is the Brake Buddy charge line. There's a couple others, a Roadmaster and a Demco as well. They all essentially do the same thing. What they're going to do is essentially trickle charge or maintain your Equinox's battery whenever you're flat towing it down the road. And that's important because generally speaking, I think almost every braking system uses your Equinox's battery power to operate. And so that can deplete the battery and then, you know, potentially cause you to jump start it once you get to your destination, you know, and have to constantly kind of just worried about keeping it topped off. So using a charge line like this is going to keep it topped off and ready to go and really make things a lot easier for you, give you a little more confidence whenever you get to your destination. There is one other thing I want to talk about too, and for those of you that are using a portable type braking system like a Brake Buddy Classic or a Blue Ox Patriot, just to kind of give you an example, those use a 12-volt cigarette lighter type port to operate. And on our Equinox, whenever we're in flat tow mode, the factory one doesn't have power, so you can run an additional one that's always powered to operate those braking systems. So here today on ours, we have the Roadmaster 12-volt outlet kit, really popular kit. We used a lot of them with good success, but I just wanted to mention that for those of you that use that portable type braking system, this is something you're definitely going to have to think about to get your system powered up. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and just kind of talk about this kit and how it's going to work. So what we usually like to do is have everything set up behind our motorhome and really paint that good picture of how everything's going to work out. Unfortunately, today we don't have our motorhome, so we're just kind of trying to make do. But I just wanted to show you guys, essentially our test box is going to simulate our motorhome. And what happens is whenever we hit the brakes or turn on our blinkers or our tail lights in the motorhome, those signals are going to get transferred back through our cable, go into the connector, and those are going to be sent to the back of our Equinox. So our motorhome has its right turn signal going, and you can see it's transmitted here to the back of our vehicle. So that's going to let people around us, know what's going on and be safe and legal. So when it comes to picking out a wiring kit, it's really just going to depend on what you have. So in our case, our Equinox has the variable voltage LED taillights. And that's when you're going to use a smart diode. And I could be mistaken, but I believe all these body style Equinoxes have that variable voltage. Obviously, for sure, ours does, and the ones with all the LEDs 100% do. But what that variable voltage means, it means essentially one wire is going to control all of your lighting functions. So on kind of standard type vehicles, you could say they have independent wires. So let's say you want to hit your brake, or you hit your brakes. Power is going to go through one wire, turn on your brake light. Say you're going to hit your blinker. Power goes through a different wire, turns on your blinker. With these, it just changes the amount of voltage that's sent through the wire to illuminate the light. So I'm not sure the exact specs here, but just trying to give an example. Let's say you hit your brakes, it sends 12 volts back. You turn your blinker on, it sends 9 volts back, and so on. And so what the smart diode is going to do is it's going to be smart enough to interpret that information and tell the light what to do. Tell the light what signal it's trying to put off. And so that's where that smart diode is going to come into play. If you were to try to use a regular type diode, it wouldn't work. It would just, you'd have a bunch of issues. Maybe one or two signals might work and kind of be intermittent. And this is the way to go for sure. It's the right way to do it. Really, with this setup, the only other option that you're going to have, if you're not wanting to mess with this, is magnetic lighting. And honestly, I think putting a little bit of effort in to this kit one time is going to be well worth it. Just super easy to hook up and everything once you have it installed. With the magnetic lights, they stick to your vehicle. You got a big old bundle of wire that you have to run all the way up, hook it up to your motorhome. It just leaves a lot of opportunity for error, and not to mention it's a pain. You have to set it up and take it apart every time you want to use it or flat tow. And then, as we all know, storage is a very important thing when you're over the road. Then you got to find a place to keep some lights and a big old bucket of wiring. So, having a smart diodes in here like this, they stay with the vehicle. You don't even know they're there, and it's super easy to hook up when you are ready to flat tow. Something that I do want to talk about is the kit is not going to come with a cable, an umbilical cable, or the connector plug. So you will have to grab that separately. With that said, though, keep in mind some tow bars actually come with those components. So, for example, I know right off the top of my head, the Roadmaster Nighthawk. That's going to come with a cable and a connector plug. So if you end up with one of those type of tow bar packages, that works out perfect. You already got the components. If not, if you choose a different tow bar that doesn't have that stuff, or you just don't have it, you are going to have to grab it. So we actually sell I guess you could call them kits, where they come with a wiring and the 6A round connector plug. And that'll kind of complete the kit. Other than that, though, at the end of the day, really nice kit. Definitely the best option as far as wiring goes if you have an Equinox with the LED taillights. It just flat out works and is reliable. Now, as far as the installation goes, I'm not gonna lie, it's not terrible by any means. It does take a little bit of time, really. That's the big thing. Just having to route, the wire from the front to the back just eats up a little bit of time. So be sure to set some aside, and really shouldn't give you too many issues. But if you'd like to follow along, stick around. We'll go ahead and do that now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Equinox, and clearly we have our front end taken apart, the fascia's removed. And that's because we're installing this while we're doing our base plate. So the base plate's on, makes it a lot easier. You just have a lot more space. That's what I suggest doing. If not, this can be done with the fascia on and everything, just a little more challenging because you don't have all this room to work. But with that said, we need to hook up our connector plug. So this particular kit isn't going to come with this 6-way round type connector. In our case, we just picked it up separately, and you can do that as well. That said, first thing that we're going to do is take one end of our wires here. So kit comes with the bundle of 4-way wiring like this. And I'm going to take our dust boot that comes with our connector plug, slide that over. This red wire here, this is for a battery charge line, so just ignore that. But if you're putting a charge line on, might as well hook it up at the same time, right? So we have the ends of our wires. We're going to separate them from each other, so you can just very carefully cut in between the wires and peel them apart from each other. Maybe something like that, a few inches. And then we can strip back the insulation. So about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch maybe, 1/4 inch, give or take. And once you have them stripped, you want to give them a good twist too. That helps ensure that we get a good connection. This is the right way to do it. So go ahead and get our white one done as well, and the brown one. So I'll get these twisted up, and then we'll grab our connector plug. So on the back of the connector plug, by the way, this is a Roadmaster 6-way round plug. On the back of it, we're going to have some terminals, and these are going to be labeled. So what you want to do is back out the set screws, and just enough to get the wire in. Try not to take them completely out, because then half the time you end up dropping them and they're pretty much impossible to find, and they're kind of just tricky to get started back in there too. They're just so small. But we're going to be using 4 of the terminals here for our diode wiring. This one be labeled TM for taillights, so that's the brown wire is going to go into it. This one labeled GD for ground, so the white wire will go into it. LT for left turn, so the yellow wire will go there. And this one here is RT for right turn, and the green wire will go into it. So that said, we'll grab our appropriate wire. We'll just start with our green right turn here. You're going to put that in, and then just tighten down the set screw. So we'll get that snug, and then just continue that process for our remaining wires. Be careful while you're doing this too. Try to get a decent screwdriver, because with these being brass, they're easy to strip, so just keep that in mind. But that's what it'll look like once you have all 4 of those wires hooked up. Once everything's hooked up, what I like to do is take some dielectric grease and just put a good coating on the terminals. That'll help keep them protected against corrosion and things of that nature. You can always grab a tube of this here at eTrailer if you want it or don't have any at the house. So we'll get a good coating on it there. And then we can take our plug. I'm going to push the rubber boot on. And then we'll just grab some hardware and get this secured. So I start to get our wiring ran, and I put it through a piece of this loom here and zip tied it to our base plate just to, it'll help blend in a little bit once we get our fascia back together. But so it just runs right across through here and then up. All right, so behind our bumper there. And here you can see the wire, right? And then it kind of runs up through here. You can kind of see it down there. And from there, It just kind of continues up along the side of our battery right here. And once we get to this spot, we can hook up our ground wire, okay? So the wiring has a green, yellow, brown, and white. All right, and what I've done is I simply just cut just the white wire in half, and do that very carefully. You don't want to cut into any of the other wires. But if you remember earlier when we, started to separate the wires and peel them back from each other, that's what I did. I peeled off, this one back a few inches, and the remainder of it, I just peeled completely off of our harness. So you can just pull that off all the way. Hold on to it for later because we will be using that. But the side that you want to work with, so the other end of this wire actually goes into our 6-way connector there. So what we can do is grab a couple of things and get this hooked up to our ground. So the end of this wire, gotta strip that insulation back, twist it, and I'm using a larger ring terminal here. It's kind of what I've got to work with, so I'm just going to double this wire back, make it a little bit thicker. Take a ring terminal, slide that on, crimp it down. And then as far as our ground goes, here's a factory ground stud right there, so it's going to work out perfect. We're going to remove this nut using a 10mm socket. All right, pull that off, slide that ring terminal over it, tighten this back down, and with that hooked up, we can continue to route our wiring. So if you look, you can see it here, and it kind of starts to run this way. We'll kind of go right through there, and then down here, it's actually going to drop down to the underside of our vehicle. And whenever you're routing this stuff, make sure to do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts. And you can secure the wiring, along the way with some of the zip ties. Underneath of our vehicle now, our wire is going to drop straight down and come out right here. So here's the factory lines that we're going to follow. This area here, there may or may not be a plastic cover. I took it off just so we could see better. You could probably do this, but with it in, but probably be easier to take off. There's just a handful of plastic nuts like this. It's a 10mm in size, and then you got one actual bolt. It's like there somewhere towards the middle. But with that said, we're just gonna follow these lines right on back. Used some zip ties along the way to keep it secure. So just continue straight, right along through here. And wire's gonna go up and over our subframe, so kind of hard to see, but it just runs up through there. And then kind of starts to shoot over more towards the driver's side, where it comes through here. And then at this point, once I got about to this point, I took our green wire and pulled it off of the yellow and brown. And the yellow and brown wire, I just ran right through here, zip tied it up. And what I did was took that remaining piece of white wire that we removed and taped it to our yellow and brown. All right, so that's what this looks like. All three of these will eventually run up into that taillight pocket on the driver's side. But so that white wire is going to run along and meet up with our green wire, and then both of those are going to get routed over to the passenger side. So I just went through here, and our trailer hitch is actually hollow, so I just push some wires through it, All right, there's where they come out. Zip tied it up. So that's what our bundle looks like. All right, and we're gonna let this hang for now as well, because this is gonna go up into that taillight pocket in a moment. So we'll let this hang for now. We'll go back up top, get our taillights out. Now at the back of our vehicle, if you open up your hatch, look at your taillight, you're gonna have two plastic covers. Take a flathead screwdriver or something small, just pry them on open. And then that'll expose a screw. It's a T15 Torx bit. It's what we're going to use to pull them out. So get them out. You can grab the tail light and just kind of carefully work it from side to side while pulling back on it too. And that'll get it to release. And then we need to disconnect it. So we're going to have a red retaining clip there. Sometimes these are super tight. You may have to take a screwdriver and just kind of help it out. And you can push down on the center of that clip. Remove the tail light, set this off to the side out of the way. Repeat the same process to get the other one removed. What I've done now, we can get our wires up into the taillight pocket. I used a fish wire here, just a piece of tubing. You can use like a coat hanger or something like that as well. But I just taped our wire to it. We'll pull that up into position here. And I'm gonna get all the slack out. And then I'm just going to secure our wire to the factory wire here, because obviously we don't need, 3-4 foot of extra wire. So pull it up tight, zip tie it there, and then I'm going to cut off kind of some of all this extra. I'll give us maybe like a foot, something to work with. A little bit extra, but not, we don't need a mile long piece of wire there. Cut those, this out of the way. And now we can separate the yellow and brown wire there. I'll pull them apart. We're going to strip back the insulation. Like that. And then for our yellow wire, what you're going to do is take one of our diodes here, and we'll take off one of these connectors and crimp it on. Like that. And then I'm kind of trying to think here. Usually what we would do with the standard diode kit is twist our brown and white wire together. But looking at these, I don't think there's any way that's going to fit. That's pretty small there. So what I think I'm going to do is the kit comes with a butt connector like this. I think what I'm going to do here, we'll try something a little different. I'm going to cut these down a little bit shorter. We'll re-strip the ends. I'm going to twist them together. This. Try to get these really tight. Take that butt connector, slip that over both ends, crimp it down. And then I'm going to grab a piece of that wire. All right. I'll use brown too, just to kind of keep everything color coordinated here. Cut off maybe, I don't know, 6-7 inches of that. Strip back one end. The other end, I gotta strip back as well, but I'm gonna do it a little bit longer. And the reason being is so we can double it up. So we'll just fold that back on itself. Take it, push it into the butt connector, crimp it down, and just to make things a little bit easier, actually, I'm going to redo this here. We don't need it quite that long. So now this will achieve the same thing as what I'm used to doing, but we'll go from 2 wires down into 1. That way it'll fit into this connector. Just like that. So what we can do now is remove some of this tape around our factory wiring. Get that sheathing out of the way. And I'm just going to very carefully take a razor and just ever so slightly cut that tape. You don't want to damage the wires, but trying to peel this tape off the old-fashioned way, it'll take you all night. A lot of times it's just not really a fun thing to do. So I'm going to do it this way. Speed things up a little bit. Be very careful when you're doing this. Obviously, you don't want to cut yourself or the wires. Let's peel this off. All right, there we go. So, got this cut off, and we're gonna have to tap into our wires. And so I tested it. We're just looking for the taillight signal. All right, and so I came up with this wire here. It's white with a yellow stripe, okay? And so, what I'm gonna do is cut that, I don't know, about in half, something like that. I strip the insulation ends back on both sides, just like the rest of them. Twist them tight. And then you're going to take these spade terminals here. Crimp one on each end. All right, and then we can take, what you're going to do is take, the kit's going to come with 2 little pieces of wire like this, these white wire. One end you can crimp on terminal, other end crimp on the ring terminal. All right, and then you're going to take your diode. This white wire, you're going to put that on the ground. Okay, and then the one here on this side, car brake out, that's going to get connected to our factory white and yellow wire there closest to the connector plug end. Factory white and yellow wire on the other side, that's going to go to car brake in. All right, and then you can take your yellow wire here, and that's going to go to RV brake. Then last remaining wire, that's going to go to RV tail. So for our ground wire here that has a ring terminal, I'm just going to secure that to the body of our vehicle using the included self-tapping screw. make sure it's tight. And then we can secure everything. So I'm just gonna kind of tuck our wires down in there. And sometimes you can actually stick this diode, but I mean, there's really nowhere that great to go with it here. So I think what I might do, I almost feel like with it sitting in here like this, the taillight's gonna put enough pressure on it to keep it from moving around, just because there's really nowhere to go with it. So we'll give that a shot, see how it works. We'll take our taillight, plug that back in, and reinstall it. Over here on the passenger side, essentially the same deal. Ground wire. This one though, instead of using the white wire with the yellow stripe, you're going to use the solid purple wire. So car brake out, goes to the purple wire closest to the connector plug. Car brake in, goes to the other side of the purple wire. RV tail, our white wire that we ran over here, goes to it. RV brake, our green wire, goes into there. So that's how it turned out, and once you have it hooked up, same deal. We'll go ahead and tuck that down in there and grab our tail light and get it reinstalled. It's a good idea to test our wiring to make sure that it works properly. So up here in the front, plug into a test box. We'll turn on our tail lights, our left turn, our right turn, and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Smart Diode Wiring Kit for vehicles with LED taillights on our 2019 Chevrolet Equinox.